In Dubai, where gold flows like water and secrets lurk behind crystal facades, the most extravagant wedding of 2024 lasted precisely 14 hours. The marriage, 47 minutes. By dawn, the bride was dead, the groom had disappeared, and a $500,000 celebration had turned into the city's most twisted crime scene. But here's what the police didn't know. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was a meticulously planned trap, set in motion 2 years earlier, and everyone, including the victim, was exactly where they were meant to be. Welcome to True Crime Anatomy. I'm your host, uncovering the darkest secrets from the Middle East's glittering cities. If you're new here, subscribe now because today's story will shatter everything you think you know about love, tradition, and the cost of perfection. This case grabbed international headlines, but the real story, the twisted game of cat and mouse that led to murder, has never been told until now. Meet Ahmed, 31 years old, a real estate developer, a millionaire by 25, heir to one of Dubai's oldest merchant families. To everyone who knew him, he was the ideal Emirati gentleman, respectful to elders, generous to friends, traditional in all the right ways. But Ahmed harbored a secret obsession that would chill your blood. In his private study, locked away from prying eyes, he kept detailed journals, not about business or family but about women, specifically about testing them. For 3 years, Ahmed had been conducting what he called purity investigations. He targeted educated, independent women, the kind he believed threatened traditional values, and systematically exposed what he saw as their lies about their past. He'd done this to 3 women before our victim. Not murder but something almost worse, complete social destruction. His method was always the same: hire private investigators, plant allies in their social circles, create fake social media profiles, and build elaborate psychological profiles. Then, when he had enough evidence of their impurity, he would orchestrate their public humiliation. But this time something went wrong. This time he didn't just want to expose her. He wanted to marry her first. What? Because Ahmed had evolved from a predator into something far darker. A man who believed that by cleansing Dubai of impure women through marriage and revelation, he was doing God's work. The wedding wasn't arranged by their families as everyone believed. Ahmed had manipulated every detail, convincing both families it was their idea. He had spent 2 years setting this elaborate trap, and our victim had walked right into it. Or so he thought. Now meet Ayla, 26 years old, an international business graduate, fluent in 4 languages, daughter of a respected government official. Beautiful, intelligent, everything a traditional family could want in a daughter-in-law. But Ayla carried a secret that was slowly eating her alive. During her university years in London, she had been in love, deeply in love, with a classmate. The relationship lasted 2 years before ending when he returned to his country for an arranged marriage. For the past 6 months, Ayla had been receiving anonymous messages, photos of her with her university boyfriend, screenshots of their private conversations, texts that simply read, "I know who you really are." At first, she thought it was her ex trying to rekindle their relationship. Then she suspected a cruel prank from someone at university. But as the messages grew more detailed, more threatening, she realized something chilling. Someone had been watching her, studying her, documenting her every move for months. Suspenseful music. When the marriage proposal came from Ahmed's family, Ayla's blood ran cold. Because she had done her own investigation and discovered something that changed everything. Ahmed wasn't just her potential husband. He was her stalker. The anonymous messages, the surveillance, the photographs, it was all him. And now he wanted to marry her. But why? What was his endgame? Ayla made a decision that would seal both their fates. She would marry him, but she would be prepared. But there's another layer to this twisted tale, one that makes it even more heartbreaking. Both families, pillars of Dubai society, were drowning in their own secrets. Ayla's father, despite his government position, faced bankruptcy. His wife's cancer treatment had drained their savings, and mounting debts threatened to destroy everything they had built. This marriage wasn't just about tradition, it was about survival. Ahmed's family was equally desperate. Their real estate empire was built on illegal land deals and government corruption. They needed connections, legitimacy, and most importantly, Ayla's father's influence to avoid prosecution. So when Ahmed proposed this perfect match, both families seized the opportunity. Neither cared about their children's happiness. Neither asked the right questions. They were all so desperate for their own salvation that they handed their children over to fate. And fate, as we'll see, had something truly horrifying in store. What happens when a master manipulator meets someone plotting their own revenge? When predator meets predator? When two people enter a marriage not for love, but for destruction? The answer will shock you. But first, let me tell you about the web of lies spun over 2 years, drawing everyone closer to a wedding night that would end in blood. What do you think? Is Ahmed a calculating predator, or is something even darker at play? And what about Ayla, victim or vengeful mastermind? Drop your theories in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, because part 2 will reveal the twisted surveillance network that made this tragedy inevitable. Trust me, you won't see this coming. 2 years before the wedding that ended in murder, Ahmed attended a university alumni event in Dubai. It was supposed to be a simple networking evening, but it became the night that changed everything. Across the crowded ballroom, he saw her. She was laughing with friends, elegant in a modest black dress, her intelligence shining through every conversation. To Ahmed, she seemed everything he valued in a woman, educated yet respectful, modern yet traditional. He watched her for hours, studying her mannerisms, her interactions, the way she carried herself with quiet confidence. That night, Ahmed went home and created his first file on Ayla. He told himself it was just curiosity, maybe even genuine interest. But within weeks, curiosity turned to obsession, and obsession became something far more sinister. Through careful social media investigation, Ahmed discovered Ayla's secret. Photos from her London university days showed her with a young man, clearly more than friends. The images were innocent enough, holding hands, laughing together, a kiss on the cheek. But to Ahmed, they were proof of deception. In his twisted mind, Ayla had become a fraud, a woman pretending to be pure while hiding her shameful past. Instead of moving on as any normal person would, Ahmed made a decision that would lead to murder. He would expose her, but not immediately. He would craft an elaborate plan to destroy her reputation, just as he had done to 3 other women before her. Ahmed hired a private investigator, a man who specialized in what he called reputation management. 4 months, this investigator followed Ayla, photographing her daily routines, recording her phone conversations when possible, and building a comprehensive profile of her life, her fears, and her vulnerabilities. But Ahmed didn't stop there. He infiltrated her social circles through fake identities, creating multiple social media accounts with stolen photos and carefully crafted personas to befriend Ayla's acquaintances. Through these fake accounts, he learned about her job, her family's financial struggles, her mother's illness, and most importantly, her deep shame about her past relationship. The harassment began subtly, anonymous messages with cryptic references to London, fake accounts commenting on her photos with veiled threats, paid individuals casually asking her friends about her reputation at social gatherings. Ahmed wanted to isolate her, to make her paranoid and vulnerable. What Ahmed didn't know was that Ayla was far smarter than his previous victims. After weeks of mysterious messages and strange coincidences, she began to suspect she was being watched. Her background in international business had taught her about corporate espionage and surveillance techniques. She started noticing patterns, taking notes, and conducting her own investigation. The breakthrough came when Ayla traced a username across multiple platforms, making subtle inquiries about her past. The account led to a fake email address, which led to a phone number, which ultimately revealed Ahmed's involvement. But what she discovered next shocked her to her core. Ahmed hadn't just targeted her. Through careful online detective work, Ayla found 3 other women who had been systematically destroyed by the same man. All were educated professionals with past relationships, all publicly humiliated and driven from Dubai after their secrets were exposed. One had attempted suicide. Another had fled the country in shame. The third had been disowned by her family. Ayla realized she wasn't just being stalked. She was being hunted by a serial predator who used tradition and honor as weapons to destroy women's lives. But unlike his previous victims, Ayla wasn't planning to run. She was planning to fight back. When Ahmed's family approached hers with the marriage proposal, Ayla understood immediately what was happening. This wasn't an arranged marriage, it was the final stage of his twisted game. He wanted to marry her first, then expose her past, maximizing her humiliation and his control. But Ayla had her own plan. She would marry him, but she would use their wedding night to destroy him instead. She began secretly recording their conversations, documenting his manipulative behavior, and gathering evidence of his stalking campaign. She contacted his previous victims, building a case to expose his pattern of abuse. What neither Ahmed nor Ayla realized was that their families were playing their own twisted games. Ayla's father, despite his respectable government position, was drowning in corruption charges. He had taken bribes for years, and now his enemies were closing in. His wife's cancer treatment was a convenient cover story, They were actually desperate for Ahmed's family's money and connections to avoid prosecution. Ahmed's family was equally corrupt. Their real estate empire was built on forged documents and government fraud. Ahmed's mother had a serious addiction to prescription drugs, spending thousands each month to maintain her habit. His father knew about Ahmed's obsession with exposing women but enabled it, believing it made his son a strong man who wouldn't be deceived by modern women. Both families saw this marriage as their salvation. Neither cared about their children's happiness or safety. They were using Ahmed and Ayla as pawns in their own desperate games of survival, actively hiding information from each other while pretending to uphold traditional values. The wedding planning became a battlefield where everyone was lying to everyone else. Ahmed was preparing to expose and humiliate his bride. Ayla was preparing to destroy her stalker. The families were using their children to save themselves from financial and legal ruin. And somehow, all these twisted agendas were set to collide on one horrific wedding night. What happens when multiple predators circle the same prey? When everyone is hunting and no one realizes they're also being hunted? When a marriage becomes the ultimate trap, but no one knows who will be caught in it? The answer lies in the most expensive hotel suite in Dubai, where a $500,000 wedding celebration was about to become a crime scene that would shock the world. Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll take you inside the wedding night that ended in blood and reveal which predator ultimately became the prey. The wedding day arrived like a perfectly choreographed performance. But beneath the golden facade, two predators were preparing for war. 500 guests filled the ballroom of Dubai's most exclusive hotel, completely unaware they were witnessing the final act of a 2-year psychological campaign that would end in murder. Ahmed played his role flawlessly, the respectful groom, kissing his father's hand, accepting congratulations with humble smiles, his eyes never leaving his bride. To everyone watching, he seemed nervous but happy, a traditional man about to start his new life. What they couldn't see was the anticipation burning in his chest. Tonight he would finally execute the plan he had perfected for months. Tonight he would expose Ayla's lies and watch her world crumble. Ayla was equally convincing in her performance. She blushed at the right moments, lowered her eyes when spoken to, and played the part of the innocent, nervous bride to perfection. Her hands trembled slightly as she signed the marriage contract, which guests attributed to wedding day nerves. But the trembling wasn't from fear, it was from adrenaline. Hidden in her wedding dress was a small recording device. Every conversation, every moment of the ceremony, was being documented. She was building evidence to destroy Ahmed and expose his crimes to the world. The families beamed with pride, each believing they had secured their salvation through this union. Ayla's father saw government protection and financial security. Ahmed's father saw legitimacy and political connections. Neither suspected their children were locked in a deadly game that had nothing to do with love or tradition. The guests posted endless photos on social media, tagging the event as the perfect Dubai wedding. Traditional drums echoed through the ballroom as ancient ceremonies were performed, each ritual masking the modern psychological warfare happening right in front of them. The bride and groom exchanged vows in Arabic, promising honor, loyalty, and protection, while each secretly planned the other's destruction. As midnight approached, the celebration reached its peak. The couple was escorted to their suite on the hotel's top floor, rose petals scattered on marble floors, champagne chilling in crystal buckets. The door closed behind them and the performance finally ended. The presidential suite fell silent, except for the distant sound of Dubai's traffic far below. Ahmed's mask slipped first. The respectful groom vanished, replaced by something cold and calculating. He walked to his suitcase and pulled out a thick manila folder. "I know who you really are," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "I know about London. I know about him. I know everything." Ayla's face went pale, exactly as Ahmed had imagined it would. He opened the folder, revealing photographs of her with her university boyfriend, printed conversations, detailed surveillance reports, 2 years of stalking and investigation laid out like evidence in a court case. "You thought you could deceive me," Ahmed continued, his voice rising with righteous anger. "You thought you could make a fool of me, of my family, of everything we stand for. But I've been watching you. I've been documenting your lies. And now everyone will know what you really are." But instead of the breakdown he expected, instead of tears and pleas for forgiveness, Ayla did something that shattered Ahmed's world. She smiled. "I know," she said simply. "I've known it was you all along." Now it was Ahmed's turn to go pale. Ayla reached into her wedding dress and pulled out her phone, showing him a recording app that had been running all evening. Then she pulled out her own folder, thicker than his. I know about Sarah, about Fatima, about Noor, she said, naming his previous victims. I know about your sick obsession with destroying women. I know about your private investigator, your fake social media accounts, your systematic harassment campaigns. I have recordings of you planning this whole thing. Ahmed's carefully constructed world began to crumble. The hunter was realizing he had been hunted. You're not the only one who can play games, Isla continued, her voice growing stronger. I've been building a case against you for months. I've contacted your previous victims. I have evidence of your stalking, your harassment, your criminal behavior. By tomorrow morning, every news outlet in Dubai will know exactly what kind of monster you are. The psychological battle that followed was unlike anything either had anticipated. Ahmed's rage at being outsmarted by a woman he considered his prey collided with Isla's fury at being stalked and terrorized for 2 years. Neither was who they had pretended to be. The victim had become the aggressor. The hunter had become the hunted. But Isla had made one fatal miscalculation. She assumed exposing Ahmed would be enough to stop him. She hadn't anticipated the depth of his narcissistic rage when confronted with his own failure. When Ahmed realized he had been manipulated by the very woman he had spent 2 years trying to destroy, something inside him snapped. The psychological warfare turned physical. Ahmed's hands found Isla's throat. She fought back, but she was smaller, weaker. The struggle was brief and brutal. In his rage at being beaten at his own game, Ahmed committed the one act that would destroy not just Isla, but himself and both families. When the violence ended, the suite was eerily quiet. 2 phones lay on the marble floor, still recording. Evidence of both their schemes was scattered around the room. His surveillance files, her counter-investigation documents, recordings of their mutual deception. Hidden in Isla's belongings, police would later find a suicide note she had written as a backup plan, prepared to destroy herself rather than let Ahmed destroy her reputation. The twisted irony was complete. Both had gotten exactly what they planned for, each other's total destruction. Neither family would get what they desperately needed. The perfect wedding had become the perfect crime scene, and Dubai's elite would be forced to confront the darkness hiding behind their golden facades. As dawn broke over the city's glittering skyline, the most expensive wedding in Dubai's history had become its most shocking murder case. The hunter and the hunted had destroyed each other, leaving behind only questions that would haunt everyone involved. What happens when the perfect crime goes perfectly wrong? When predator meets predator, and both refuse to back down? The answer was written in blood on marble floors, and it would change Dubai forever. When Dubai police entered the presidential suite that morning, they expected to find a typical domestic violence case. What they discovered instead was evidence of the most elaborate psychological warfare campaign in the city's history. The crime scene told a story so twisted that even seasoned investigators struggled to comprehend its full scope. Both phones were still recording when police arrived. Hours of audio revealed the shocking truth. This wasn't a simple murder, but the violent climax of a 2-year game of mutual psychological torture. Ahmed's voice could be heard detailing his surveillance operation, while Isla's responses revealed her own counter-investigation. Neither was victim nor perpetrator. Both were predators who had hunted each other to the death. The evidence scattered around the suite painted a picture of systematic stalking that went far beyond anything police had seen before. Ahmed's files contained hundreds of photographs of Isla taken without her knowledge, detailed psychological profiles, and records of every person he had paid to gather information about her. But equally disturbing were Isla's documents. Recordings of Ahmed's conversations, evidence of his previous victims, and a carefully planned strategy to destroy his reputation. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered Ahmed's private investigator, a man named Rashid, who specialized in reputation management. Under interrogation, Rashid broke down and confessed to 2 years of systematic stalking. He revealed that Ahmed wasn't just obsessed with Isla. He had hired Rashid to destroy 3 other women before her. He was sick, Rashid told investigators, his hands shaking as he spoke. He would spend hours studying these women, learning their fears, their weaknesses. Then he would create elaborate plans to humiliate them publicly. He called it cleansing Dubai of impure women. Rashid's confession exposed a network of men who targeted educated, independent women with past relationships. They used social media manipulation, paid informants, and systematic harassment to drive their victims into isolation and despair. Ahmed was their leader, a man who had turned misogyny into a twisted crusade. The investigation exposed both families' carefully constructed lies. Isla's father, the respected government official, was revealed to be deeply corrupt. Financial records showed years of bribes and illegal deals. His wife's medical bills, the supposed reason for their financial desperation, were fabricated. They had used their daughter's marriage as a shield to avoid prosecution for their crimes. Ahmed's family was equally corrupt. Their real estate empire was built on forged documents and government fraud. Police found evidence of money laundering, tax evasion, and bribery stretching back decades. Ahmed's mother wasn't just socially conscious. She was addicted to prescription drugs, spending thousands each month to maintain her habit while pretending to be a pillar of traditional values. The marriage that both families had celebrated as a union of honor was revealed to be nothing more than a business transaction between two criminal enterprises. Neither family had cared about their children's well-being. They had used them as pawns in their own desperate games of survival. As news of the murder spread, 3 women came forward with stories that made investigators' blood run cold. Sarah, a former teacher, described how Ahmed had systematically destroyed her career by spreading rumors about her past relationships. She had been forced to leave Dubai in shame, her family disowning her after Ahmed's evidence was revealed. Fatima, a successful businesswoman, told of how Ahmed had infiltrated her social circle, gathering information about her university years abroad. When he exposed her past, she lost her job, her friends, and nearly her life. She had attempted suicide after the public humiliation, surviving only by chance. Noor, a journalist, revealed how Ahmed had used fake social media accounts to harass her for months before publicly exposing her relationship history. The campaign had been so thorough that she fled the country, abandoning her career and family to escape the shame. All 3 women described the same pattern. Months of psychological torture followed by public humiliation. Ahmed had destroyed their lives methodically, using their own shame and society's judgment as weapons. What they didn't know was that he had been documenting everything, keeping detailed records of each woman's destruction like trophies. Ahmed was found 3 days later in the desert outside Dubai, dehydrated and delirious. He had fled to his family's desert compound, but paranoia had driven him further into the wilderness. When police discovered him, he was raving about cleansing and purification, his mind clearly broken by the realization that his perfect plan had destroyed him instead of his victim. His confession was more disturbing than investigators had prepared for. Ahmed showed no remorse for Ayla's death, only anger at being caught. He described his victims not as human beings but as problems to be solved, corruption to be cleansed from Dubai's society. "I was protecting other men from being deceived," he told investigators, his eyes wild with fanatical certainty. "These women were living lies, pretending to be pure while hiding their shameful pasts. I was doing God's work by exposing them." Police found his personal manifesto, a 100-page document detailing his belief that modern women were corrupting traditional values. He had planned to expand his operation, recruiting other men to help him cleanse Dubai of what he called deceptive women. The murder was never part of his plan. It was the result of his rage at being outsmarted by someone he considered inferior. The investigation revealed that Ahmed had been building towards something much larger than individual harassment campaigns. He had been creating a network of like-minded men who shared his twisted beliefs about women and purity. The murder had stopped what could have become a systematic campaign of terror against Dubai's educated women. As the full scope of the conspiracy became clear, Dubai's elite were forced to confront uncomfortable truths about their own society. The perfect wedding had become a mirror, reflecting the darkness that could hide behind traditions of honor and respectability. The case that began as a simple murder had uncovered corruption, systematic abuse, and a culture that had enabled a predator's campaign of terror. The consequences would ripple through Dubai's highest circles, destroying reputations and forcing a reckoning with values that had protected the guilty while silencing the innocent. What happens when a society's darkest secrets are exposed? When the pursuit of perfection creates monsters? The final chapter of this story would force Dubai to choose between protecting its image and protecting its people. The trial of Ahmed began 6 months after the murder, and from the moment the courtroom doors opened, it was clear this case would shake Dubai to its foundations. International media descended on the city, drawn by a story that exposed the dark intersection of tradition, technology, and terror. What they found was a society being forced to confront its own reflection in the most uncomfortable way possible. The prosecution's case was devastating. Evidence revealed not just a murder, but a systematic campaign of terror that had been operating in Dubai's elite circles for years. The courtroom fell silent as prosecutors displayed Ahmed's surveillance files, hundreds of photographs of Ayla taken without her knowledge, detailed psychological profiles, and records of payments made to informants who had infiltrated her social circle. But the most powerful moments came when Ahmed's previous victims took the stand. Sarah, the former teacher, testified about losing her career and reputation after Ahmed's exposure campaign. Her voice shook as she described the systematic harassment that had driven her from Dubai, her own family turning against her based on rumors and manufactured evidence. Fatima, the businesswoman who had attempted suicide, spoke about the months of psychological torture that preceded her public humiliation. She described how Ahmed had used her own shame against her, manipulating societal expectations to turn her into a pariah. Noor, the journalist who had fled the country, testified via video link from her exile. She described the network of fake social media accounts that had harassed her, the way Ahmed had turned her friends against her, and the ultimate revelation that had destroyed her life. Her words hung in the courtroom air like an accusation against everyone who had enabled this behavior. The family's complicity was laid bare for all to see. Evidence showed how both sets of parents had ignored warning signs, prioritized financial gain over their children's safety, and actively participated in covering up the crimes that had funded their lifestyles. Dubai's elite, many of whom had attended the wedding, were forced to confront their own role in enabling a system that had protected predators while silencing victims. The defense's strategy shocked even seasoned court observers. Ahmed's lawyers argued that their client had been driven to madness by the deceptive behavior of modern women who pretended to be traditional while hiding shameful pasts. They claimed that rapid social change had caused his psychological breakdown, making him unable to distinguish between reality and his twisted fantasies. "My client was a product of a society in transition," the defense attorney argued. "He was raised with certain values, certain expectations about women and purity, and when confronted with what he gathering information about her university years abroad, processed the contradiction. When he exposed her past, the defense even attempted to blame Isla for her own death. She had attempted her suicide after the public humiliation, confessed surviving only by chance. Response. Nor this strategy revealed how Ahmed had used fake social media accounts to harass her that had enabled Ahmed's crimes exposing her relationship history. The judge's verdict, the campaign had been so thorough that she fled the country, was found guilty, abandoning her career and family to escape shame, and conspiracy to commit harassment. The same pattern. The sentence was life imprisonment without the possibility of public humiliation. But the judge's statement had destroyed their lives methodically. It was a condemnation of the society that had made such crimes possible. What they didn't know was that he had been the dangerous extreme of what happens when traditional values become weapons of control. The judge declared. Ahmed was found 3 days later in the desert outside Dubai, dehydrated and delirious. When family honor becomes more important than human dignity, but paranoia had driven him further into they are doing God's work while destroying innocent lives. He was raving about the ripple effects of the trial transformed Dubai society in ways no one had anticipated. That his perfect plan had destroyed him instead of his victim, not just by legal consequences, was more disturbing than investigators had followed their exposure. Ahmed showed no remorse for Isla's business empire, only faced their own criminal charges. He described his victims not as human beings but as problems to be solved, while her mother struggled with the guilt of having failed to protect her daughter. "I was protecting other men from being deceived," he told investigators. Isla's younger sister, wild with fanatical certainty, by the courage of the women who had testified, lies, became a powerful advocate while hiding their shameful past. She established a foundation in her sister's memory, working to protect women from the kind of systematic harassment. 100-page document detailing his belief that modern women were corrupting traditional gaps in its protection of women. To expand his new laws were enacted targeting psychological harassment and stalking of what he called severe penalties for those who use traditional values to justify abusive behavior. It was the result of his rage at being outsmarted by someone he considered inferior. With new requirements for counseling and background checks to prevent arranged marriages from becoming much larger than individual harassment campaigns. Intense public debate about the role of tradition in modern society. Men who shared his twisted beliefs about women clashed with conservative voices. The murder had stopped religious leaders were forced to clarify that true Islamic values protected women rather than enabling their abuse. As the full scope of the conspiracy became clear, implemented new policies to prevent the kind of systematic harassment about their own society. Psychological wedding had become a mirror case to educate the public about the warning signs of traditions of honor and respectability. They explained how seemingly traditional values could be twisted into justifications for stalking and abuse, and how culture that had enabled predators to destroy lives. and how families and communities could unknowingly enable predators, destroying reputations and forcing a reckoning with values that had protected the guilty while silencing the innocent. How many other women had been silently destroyed by men who believed they were protecting traditional values? When the pursuit of perfection prioritized reputation over their children's safety, story would force Dubai to choose the other way while systematic abuse occurred in their social circles. The trial of Ahmed began 6 months after the murder, disturbing and from the moment the courtroom doors opened, how perfectionism and control could become deadly weapons, how reducing women to their sexual history created a culture of shame drawn by a story that exposed the dark intersection of families and society and maintaining harmful traditions. What they found was a society being forced to confront its own reflection in the most uncomfortable way possible. Not just for her family, but for an entire society. Was devastating. Dubai was forced to choose not just protecting its image but a systematic campaign of terror that had been operating in Dubai's death circles for years, or whether other women would suffer the same fate. As prosecutors displayed Ahmed's surveillance attention faded, hundreds of photographs of Isla taken without her knowledge. Learn from this tragedy, psychological profiles, silence that had enabled such horrors to informants who had infiltrated her social circle. The answer would be written in the lives of the women who came after Isla, and whether they would be protected or abandoned by a society finally forced to see itself clearly. Testified about the mirror her career and reputation, and there was no going back to the beautiful lie of perfection that had hidden such as she described the systematic harassment. The only question now was whether Dubai would use this painful reflection to become something better, or whether it would simply learn to hide its darkness more carefully. The businesswoman who had attempted suicide, spoke about the months of psychological torture that preceded her public humiliation. She described how Ahmed had used her own shame against her, manipulating societal expectations to turn her into a pariah. Noor, the journalist who had fled the country, testified via video link from her exile. She described the network of fake social media accounts that had harassed her, the way Ahmed had turned her friends against her, and the ultimate revelation that had destroyed her life. Her words hung in the courtroom air like an accusation against everyone who had enabled this behavior. The family's complicity was laid bare for all to see. Evidence showed how both sets of parents had ignored warning signs, prioritized financial gain over their children's safety, and actively participated in covering up the crimes that had funded their lifestyles. Dubai's elite, many of whom had attended the wedding, were forced to confront their own role in enabling a system that had protected predators while silencing victims. The defense's strategy shocked even seasoned court observers. Ahmed's lawyers argued that their client had been driven to madness by the deceptive behavior of modern women who pretended to be traditional while hiding shameful pasts. They claimed that rapid social change had caused his psychological breakdown, making him unable to distinguish between reality and his twisted fantasies. My client was a product of a society in transition, the defense attorney argued. He was raised with certain values, certain expectations about women and purity, and when confronted with what he